subconscious. You may know a lot of them, never think that you got this. Wise words, pay attention to these wise words. And people follow people, but seldom following dreams. They tend to follow dreams, but never know what they mean. These are wise words, pay attention to these wise words.
Go ahead and get this cranked up now that we know each other a little bit better and shit. So
yeah.
All right. So we're here on another episode of Wyze Words. I got my co-host Whitey here, and we're here with my brother from Apex, Josh Perry, who is a serial entrepreneur in entertainment, trucking, distribution, app building tech, and speaking. He has a comeback story from the trailer park to the boardrooms. Can you kind of go a little bit more detail and tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, man. So my background is my parents were both in the military and the Air Force in the logistics industry. So they, for instance, my dad has driven over 60 countries. He just recently retired from 45 years of CDL driving. And then my mom also drove for 22. And so, you know, that doesn't just necessarily make you rich, right? And so I graduated high school from a class of 46 in the most rural county in western Arkansas, Montgomery County. And from there, I was able to build and now I have an office in downtown Fayetteville, and I have, you know, several companies, as you mentioned, that do a wide variety of things. And you know, they all kind of work together, so it's not like I don't sleep because I have so much stuff going on. It's like it's just a collective, and it's about building community more than it is about anything. So
absolutely. So how'd you get started in the, you know, music and entertainment business?
Yeah, so I had a major back injury, and I don't remember what year, but I was 19 years old, and it was right before my birthday, my 20th birthday. And I told myself for 2 weeks that I was going to buy a guitar and learn how to play and sing. And so then I had the back injury, and a week later I bought the guitar, and I played in this, at the time I lived in this one-room shack with another couple. And I played literally 7 to 8 hours a day, every day for the first year I owned that guitar. It was this cheap Alvarez $300 guitar. And then the second year I cut it down. And, you know, to keep in mind, I went back to work and I moved furniture after about 6, 8 weeks. So I'm doing 12-hour days and then coming home and playing 7, 8 hours of guitar.
After you hurt your back, you're moving furniture?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, body was in a little bit better physical condition at 20 years old. You know, you can bounce back a lot quicker than I can now in my 40s. But
it's a lot easier to bounce back at that age.
Yeah. But so the second year I cut it down to 4 hours a day, and I'm still kind of doing just, you know, odd jobs and labor jobs and stuff. And I was downtown in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and a guy walked by and heard me playing and singing, and I wasn't really like busking or anything, but he offered me a gig, and it was every other Friday. $75 was my first gig at Heavy's Bar.
A honky tonk, like a dive bar or something?
Man, it was like this hole in the wall bar called Slim's on Hobson in the hood over there in Hot Springs. And I was just tickled pink, dude. I didn't even have a car at the time, right? So I pulled up with an acoustic guitar and an amp that I borrowed from a guy, and a mic I bought at a pawn shop for like $15 or something, you know. Yeah. And I was just living the dream, dude, doing that for a while. And then I started to realize as this crowd started coming in and people like started talking about that, you know, who's this guy, Josh Perry or whatever. And so I leveraged that over the course of about 6 years into a pretty lucrative music career, and just, you know, kind of doing some little touring and different gigs, doing acoustic, and I had a cover band and I did a comedy gig, and I was just, you know, I was just amazed that people were paying me to do what I was doing anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so I never really had like any kind of formal education in the business side of it. I was just like doing it all by myself. You know, I'm setting up my own shows, I'm booking my own gigs, I'm one-man show in a lot of ways, right? And so then then later on, I kind of had this fork in the road of like choosing. I thought there was a separation between having to choose music and choose a family. So I raised a family for many years and kind of stood in the background of the music scene and still had all these, pretty major connections with some very high prolific and kind of the old heads in the rap game and rock game, and some of these people I'd opened for and stuff. And so when I got back into it after having 12 years of business knowledge and building a couple multi-million-dollar businesses for other people behind me, I really leaned into helping other very left brain artists, creatives create that business structure and right brain type of stuff that I just seen lacking in the industry a lot. Right. So that's how I kind of got back involved and started doing, bigger events, and we've got some stuff going on with the city, and we just did a big, row week show and sell to fraternities and sororities all over the country.
Are you happy that you got back into the music entertainment business in some form or fashion? Is it?
Yeah. So it's, for me, it was more about just aligning with my purpose. And I've always felt that being in the entertainment industry in particular was something I was meant to do. And I know people are like trying to get famous and all that stuff, and I even chased that for a while, but it was really unfulfilling for me, because what's more fulfilling for me is getting people's art out there and seeing that crowd interaction and like the vibe that comes from a live event in particular, or even a recording session in some cases, where it's like you feel that electricity in the room, and you're doing something that's going to create some core memories for people.
Absolutely. I think we can relate to a lot of that too, right?
I'm sitting here feeling every bit of that. What's the largest city where you're at?
So I live here in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So we've got Fayetteville, Springdale, Bentonville, Lowell, Rogers, that are all kind of here together. But I think Springdale is actually the third biggest city in the state.
The major, you're close to Texas, right?
Yeah, Dallas is like a 5-hour drive. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Tulsa's 2 hours. Little Rock's 3. Kansas City's 3. We're very centrally located in the center of the United States. And what's interesting is we just call it locally here NWA, because everything's like butted up to each other, just like it is in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
Right. And
so collectively, we're, about the same size as the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex.
So you're doing, you're in the trucking and tech business now. I see. Looked at your website a little bit. Did you develop? I'm sure you did all that.
Yeah. So I've ran freight brokerages for about the past 10 years as what I would consider my day job or whatever. But it's really, again, aligned to my purpose, and coming from a trucking family, I just felt like, my experience and things I could bring to the table of seeing it from the perspective of the guy in the truck and like growing up the kid in the truck, allowed me to take a different approach and a more people-centric approach, actually, because not a lot of people see a truck driver as a very important person. But the reality of our world today is that the American truck driver is literally the most important person in the world, because everything that you use is transported by a truck at some point. And so given that kind of deep reverence and perspective of really caring about the driver is what led me to building Lane Hero. And Lane Hero, we are well on our way to becoming the #1 driver services app in the world. We service 5 different languages and countries all over the world, and really just provide tools that make anybody who charges for a service fee and drives their vehicle the ability to know exactly what their costs are in that trip of that service that they're providing, whether that's transporting freight or a plumber coming out to your house or whatever the case may be. but it's essentially a mini cost gauging tool that you can talk to.
So we met through Apex. I met you at the $1 Million Mastermind this year. What's funny, before I even met you, like I had a couple people like, "Hey man, if you met Josh Perry, you guys need to link up," because they knew we had a similar background with the music industry and putting together shows and events and whatnot. So it was cool because Jeremy Chaplik, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He mentioned you earlier that day. And then Joe said something, and we was hanging out with Joe later that day, and I ran into you. So, how long you been in Apex?
I have so I actually was involved in the network Sales Talk with Sales Pros since, I don't know, I think it's second year of inception, 7, 8, 9 years maybe. Actually longer than that, probably 10 or 11. But as far as being a formal member of Apex, I've been in just over a year. Actually closer to a year and a half now that I think about it. But I went ahead and jumped in for the lifetime membership because, just the value that I've found out of that group and similar minded people like yourself is pretty phenomenal. So I talked with several, in fact, I talked to Jeremy Chaplik yesterday and another Apex member, Josh Champion, as well, and have found a lot of, similar minded people for sure.
The network is the best part of that, and I feel like it kind of eliminates the ceiling because a lot of times in your environment, everyone's kind of got this, this is the ceiling, but people like us or like-minded people might think that there is no ceiling. So it kind of removes that when you see other people pushing past the barrier.
I got a question for you, since you're in freight, because I keep hearing that AI is going to replace all these jobs and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even heard that it's gonna AI is gonna like change the game as far as freight transport, but I'm not seeing how it could be possible unless they do it with drones or program these self-driving trucks and cars. Like, what's your take on all that?
Yeah, so I think some of that's true to a degree. And, Lane Hero has AI in it, right? We are AI routing the absolute smartest route that this vehicle can take, whether it's a Prius or a Peterbilt, and making sure that those routes are safe and the most up-to-date things. One of the things we're talking about doing after our launch with the Arkansas Trucking Association is giving it away to school bus drivers for free, because their location data, they know how to go around a local area better than an over-the-road truck driver who's from, if you're from Louisville and he's from New Jersey, like you're going to know the route better than he is at the same time.
Did you hear about what happened in Louisville the first day of school?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Kids don't get home till 10 o'clock at night.
What?
Yeah. I don't know if it was a lack of drivers or just, disorganization, but we had the same problem here in this little county that we're in on the first day of school. Like my son didn't get home. Man, he was still at the school at like 4 o'clock that day.
I'd have been lit up. I'm gonna just tell you. But I want to go back to answer your question about the AI here. So we're using AI and we're using those things, but I don't think that we're like, Skynet Terminator level of transporting shit with Arnold Schwarzenegger walking around with a crate or whatever.
Right.
And there have been some amazing advancements, and I'm very familiar with a company here locally in Northwest Arkansas called Gaddick that has a very phenomenal self-driving truck, and they have a deal with Walmart. But what they do is they picked a specific lane, and it's called middle mile logistics, where you're going from a distribution center to a store, and so they have these regular predictable routes. There's literally a self-driving truck that goes through Rogers, Arkansas every single day, and so I think it does have productive applications. I don't think that it can replace everything. And so, for instance, one of the contracts that we're working on right now is transporting the radioactive chemicals for PET scans. and they have an 8-hour shelf life from the point of manufacture to getting in somebody's arm so that they can do the contrast test, right? And that is a type of critical transport that I don't think you want to trust AI with when that dose has a person's name on it, right? And you got 8 hours to get from, say, Louisville to Memphis or whatever. There's just no room for error. And the
Right.
only person that's going to care about another person the way that person needs to be carried and is not an algorithm. It's another loving person.
Right. Yeah. That's been my biggest thing with the AI is it lacks, they obviously has no empathy,
Yeah.
so there's a human element to certain things. I think, especially like counseling and things like that, that AI just can't, you know,
Well, but even from a business decision perspective, one of the other things we transport is food processing materials or machinery rather. And so, we've had situations where there's 100 guys in this food plant, like a JBS or Tyson or whatever food plant, and they are union paid. And so they're there to install the equipment. And if that equipment doesn't show up on time, those wages still have to be paid. So in some cases, it can be tens of thousands of dollars an hour, that if this isn't there at the time it needs to be, that's a true cost to the business. And you just can't put that on anybody but a proven expert and a reliable expert of taking care of something like that. And the only way to do that is a strong people network. And I
Right.
talk about that a lot in my success is that, I didn't get here myself, right? Like my network and the people that I know and the people that have helped me along the way are really what I'm responsible for and what, I owe it to them to go out and be successful for their support that they've given to me. And I truly do look at it that way as I'm out here getting it to put on for my people is the way I conceptualize it,
That old school hustler mentality still plays a part in that.
Yeah, I even teach that in my freight business, right? Like, I'm not shy about telling people that I got a seedy background in drug dealing, right? That I put down a long time ago. But the other thing about that is that all those skills that I learned are the same things that applied to making me successful in the freight industry. Because if you look at it, you can't talk to the plug or the person you're getting the loads from the same way that you talk to the junkie or the truck driver that you're giving the load to, right? And there's this transactional type of thing that it's very similar, to doing a drug deal. And I don't know about you, but I don't know anybody that's never ever in their life done some type of drug deal, right? So
Yeah.
it's a very relatable and easy to teach method that I just found over the years is builds trust too, right? Because I'm super transparent about my background and where I come from, and I'm not. The first couple of years, I was a little embarrassed. I'm not gonna lie, right? But the more I just leaned into like who I really am and where my skills really lie, and people were able to see my transparency and integrity that I backed it up with, it's like you become unfuckwithable.
Yeah, I feel like authenticity is like the biggest thing, man. Once you stray away from who you really are and your background, then you know what I'm saying, you're portraying somebody you're not, and it's just so much easier to be you. So
Yep.
I'm glad you said that.
So
Well, while we're on the topic of AI, I wanted to bring up something kind of similar. You're in trucking and have music in your background and whatnot. So, what's your take on AI and music? Have you heard like there's a new song that like Biggie Smalls and Tupac did, the Mini Men. Have you heard that?
I have, yeah. I actually am really big into the AI music portion of it. And I have about, I don't know, I think I'm up to 90 or so tracks that I've produced of AI music that I've yet to release and publish and stuff. But where I feel like it works and is easily utilized as a tool to create good music that can like do the thing is what I call it, right? Incite that feeling is the same way that you can use Chat GBT for making content. So, I use Chat GBT for making some of my content but I don't use it verbatim, right? I use it as like a template almost of what I need to say. And then I go through and I humanize it and put my own spin on it. But it just reduces the amount of time that I have to invest in it, especially in a case like mine where, look, I have dyslexia and have for a long time, right? So I can get out the biggest portion of the words and then go through and edit them and get similar quality. Now, I say all that to say, in the same way you can do with music, right? Only so many notes, right? You're painting with all the same colors. You get the variety of colors that you're looking for, that group of instruments, and you can break that down into stem files just like a DJ would, and you regurgitate those stem files into a more musical feeling, emotional playing, with a real person behind it. Now you've got a work of art, right?
This
And
is
so
what
it's
I
like
this is
building
what
in some of those simpler drum beats and, like, meticulous shit that you don't want to have to go through and build manually is where I think AI music is very beneficial.
I want to do. I want to get with Jordan. We're going to do this. I want to find some artists I've never heard of, and then
I
maybe
got you.
do like you know how they do like taste tests when you get blindfolded. I want to play like 8 songs, 4 of them AI, 4 of them written by a person, and see if I can tell the difference on which ones was done by AI and which ones was done by people. Because I still believe that they're just like what we was talking about a minute ago. There's a human element to art and music. Like, you can't program it, not the good shit anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, but where you get into a problem is, I believe, is a lot of people that are just making, like, if you're doing music and you're just doing it to make money, to brand it, then you're obviously doing commercial music. So you're trying
Yep.
to stick to a formula. You know what I'm saying? Like, whereas if somebody's making music because for their own personal reasons, whether it be art or whether it be emotional or whatever, or just to tell stories, then they're going to have more of a human element to theirs. I heard the first AI song I've ever heard was this morning, and it was Quavo. And, like, Quavo he released his album yesterday. I listened to that all night or whatever. When I heard that AI Quavo this morning, it was trash, man. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but it wasn't Quavo. It was AI Quavo, but it wasn't him. You know what I'm saying? And to me, I think it was obvious, but I'm wondering if that's a biased opinion. If I could really go out, if we do this test, if I would be able to actually pick which is AI and which is real people. You know what I'm saying?
That sounds like a fun test, and I have the resources already available to have, you know what I mean? I got human built beats and a bunch of producers, as well as, again, I've got over 90 AI tracks myself. So I think we could link back up on that and have some
Yeah, we
fun with
need
that
to.
for sure.
We need to.
That sounds fun. So we're gonna do that. I'm excited to have the two of you guys in the same room, Zoom together, because Whitey's got quite the history as well. So
We got a lot of similarities in our story as far as the music goes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I kind of stopped being which we was up here in BFE. We're 45 minutes away from Nashville. You know what I'm saying? But it is like it's a difference. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got the metro area, and then you got the sticks. You know what I'm saying? And we was kind of trying to jump off in the sticks. And in Kentucky, back when we was doing it, the only people that ever made any noise was Nappy Roots and Static Major in Louisville. You know what I'm saying? And all the rest of the people that had regional success, like Haystack, they was in Nashville, but it got to the point where I was like, man, we're trying to make this happen and jump off in an area that's just not, like, they wasn't even ready for it yet. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't even really an underground hip hop scene in this area. So, my idea was, well, I'll step back from trying to be a solo artist, because we had success. You know what I'm saying? Like, anything we actually tried to do, we attained it, but it got to a point where I was like, man, like, what would help is if the area had more of a scene. And so not only do you need one artist, you need multiple artists, you need multiple producers to create that you got to have the scene. You got to have, the format for it. You got to have a platform. And it hadn't never been built here yet. You know what I'm saying? So I basically stopped being an artist. I went to school in Nashville to learn, the engineering production side of it, like legit, you know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, like I went from wanting to be like an artist to wanting to be behind the scenes. You know what I mean? And I had legal troubles in between. So, it was just a little speed bump in the road, but I definitely want to link up with you in the future.
Yeah, for sure, dude. I'm down to put in work, and music is my passion, and there is man, there's lots of people on all levels and walks of life that you would be surprised how much value that they put in not only music, but the community that music brings, right? And the joy that you can put in people's lives. And I talk about, we're responsible for the core memories of hundreds of thousands of people through these events that we do every year, right? Like these are like new people fluttering into these events, and young people coming up and looking at the underground scene like you're talking about, and all this. And especially with our college events, there's constantly new rush classes and these new kids filtering in. And
so do you think that the internet, because the internet's helped artists a lot, right? But it's almost taken the grassroots, to me, it's almost taken the grassroots element out of it, because what it did was it connected everybody, right? So there's no distinguishing now. All right, the Memphis area, the New Orleans area, they jump in the internet and they're in the same pool, right? They're seconds away from each other. Back in the day, it was more distinguished. Like you had the Memphis rappers and you had the Memphis scene, you had the New Orleans scene. Well, you bring the internet in and that bridges it and so rapidly, like they're automatically tapped in like we are right here. So
I think it's separated us as much as it's brought us together, in the way that I see all too many artists that think they can just run some social media ads and spend some money, and they'll get their Spotify numbers up to where they're getting paid, and YouTube and all this other stuff, which are, there's no arguing that YouTube's made more millionaires than anybody ever, right, in the history of the world. So it's a great platform. I'm not saying anything against that. But what I am saying is that old school mentality of, tagging posters everywhere and going and talking to people in the mall and on the campuses, and then that walking around and passing out stuff kind of mentality is very rare. I'll say that I have seen it, and most of the bigger people who make it, is what I'll say, are the ones that are out there doing that, and they're not like living this better than you rock star type of lifestyle, right? They're out there grinding on the streets before their show and talking to people and networking, and you know what I mean? Like they're like out to get it, not just feel like they're special because they play an instrument in front of a crowd. You know what I mean?
I told Jordan a couple of weeks ago, I said I'd respect somebody if I saw somebody pushing their product right now out in the street. I would respect them a whole lot more than if I'm scrolling on Facebook and I see some video that you just shot.
I bought tickets to a rock show I cannot attend on Sunday because they stopped by and they were hustling. You know what I'm saying? And it's like I end up giving them away, but I wanted to support those guys who are out there just getting after it, is what I call it.
Right.
Hitting the slab.
Easy to be whoever you want to be online. You know what I'm saying? You can portray whatever persona you want to. But when you're out, slinging out the trunk, you got CDs or posters or whatever it is, you've got to be that image. You know what I'm saying? You can't fake that funk. So.
Yep. And I think there's far too many fake love, fake friends, fake music, talking about the AI or whatever, fake just everything. And so, I'll kind of give a little sneak peek here, although I told myself I wasn't gonna. The AI music that I'm producing is all based on taking off a mask and being your most authentic self. And so there's a whole curated thing behind all of it that is, a broader analogy for what we're talking about here. And I'll be dropping that stuff here pretty soon. So I want to, give a little sneak peek here, first look on your show. So.
All right. Well, they'll be looking for it. So we'll make sure to plug that in and let plug where people can find you before it's all said and done. So let's talk about like some of the obstacles you faced in life and business. Like what's one of the major obstacles or struggles you've had to fight through?
Yeah. Well, as did you, came from really rough financial means. I actually bought a pack of cigarettes for a guy the other night and told him he had a guitar in the gas station. He was busking for change to buy a pack of cigarettes. And I seen him like counting out the change or whatever. And I just bought them. And I said, believe it or not, wasn't too long ago that I was busking for change for a pack of cigarettes. You know what I mean? And so, those kind of trials of coming from, a trailer park. And again, I lived with two other people in a 1-room shack and slept on the couch for over a year and a half, and having kids, and, not to tell on myself too much, but I got two different baby mamas and 2 kids, you know what I mean? Type of stuff. And there's been some challenges there that I've had to overcome. But, at the end of the day, man, it all boiled down to the biggest challenges were within myself. And, it's like the external challenges are really a representation, I think, of what your character is and what you really believe that the story about yourself is. So the further I went into just like believing what I was really capable of, and I look in the mirror and like think about how much I know who the fuck I am, right? But other people see me different than I see myself a lot of times. And so just leaning into what was most authentically me was, I think, probably the biggest challenge throughout my life, even more so than the financial and emotional and people that died and all this other stuff that happened. I got friends that are to this day addicted to drugs that are people I care about, But again, the challenges within myself and being able to just stay true to respecting my boundaries and all that stuff was the biggest thing. Because, when I was a wild fucking outlaw drug dealer, right? I didn't have any boundaries. I did whatever the fuck I wanted and didn't care what the law said or anybody else for that matter. But as I grew older and wiser is what I would say, I came to understand that allowing certain things in my life wasn't beneficial to the goals that I had within my life, right? And that the more I was able to set up those boundaries and not walls, right? Because walls are like cumbersome to carry around with you, but boundaries to say, no, man, I'll fuck with that, right? Or I'm drinking water today instead of a bottle of whiskey, or you know what I mean? Like I'm working out today. I'm educating myself today to make it towards my goals. That's the battle we all fight every day. You know what I'm saying? And that's the hardest one.
Man, you just dropped all kinds of gold nuggets right there. I hope everybody's paying attention because that was some valuable stuff right there. What you got, Whitey?
Man, yeah, I'm just listening. But so back in the day when you was doing your hustle thing back in the day, is there any principles that you still carried from there? Like, just because you was selling drugs don't mean you was a piece of shit, right? Like,
yeah,
there's still, to me, a drug dealer is just, saying that's what he does. They really don't define who he is. You know what I'm saying? Because like I've known all kinds of different dudes. You know what I'm saying? Some of them stand-up guys and some of them snakes, in the same trade, right? Just kind of like how you got cops that don't necessarily define who they are. Like, I mean, yeah, we might can marginalize and say that, well, the majority of them's bad, or, if you're of another opinion that, the majority of them's good. At the end of the day, that's still what they do. That's not necessarily who they are. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah, I'd say to answer your question, I framed it a lot different back in the day, but what I frame it as now is the same thing as those principles I had back then. And I just, my inner circle boundary, friends and family and the people that I choose to spend the majority of my time with, I just have this like guideline of no disrespect and no one-sided relationships, right? If we're not reciprocating something, or and it doesn't have to be money or profit, it could be love, or it could be empathy, or it could be support from an emotional standpoint, or any of those things. There's got to be some type of energetic exchange to keep a long-standing relationship, because and going further than that, to build a community, right? Because if you're personally invested in the people in the community got a lot more love. The same thing with, if you're recruiting a team to go out and hit the streets for you, you got to have that love, and you got to have that exchange of everybody knows that things filter up to the top and down to the bottom, and you know what I mean, how all the shit works. I don't want to, get into the details and tell myself too much, right? But
Yeah,
then as
that's
far as
another
no disrespect,
that's another reason. Like that's another thing that, and I don't mean to be going back to the music all the time, but with the internet, like it's got a lot of people. Let me think of how to word this. Me and Jordan have talked about this before. I believe you can judge, we'll say, a rapper by the way his hometown or his community looks at him, right? I believe you can judge people by that, because all right, so let's take an example. What we was just talking about. If somebody's selling drugs, but they give back to their community more than somebody who is, what I'm saying, doing something that the community deems positive, but they're taking a check home every day and not giving back to the community that they take away from, right? So the same thing with rappers. Like I see it, and it's an immediate turnoff to me if I see like somebody on social media complaining that they don't have any support. Like, why don't anybody play my music, or why ain't anybody sharing my shit? Dude, it says more about you than it does about them, right? Like, because maybe if you wasn't such a fucking asshole, that people would share your shit. Like, not everybody's a hater, right?
yeah.
Like sometimes the problem is the man in the mirror. You know what I mean? But I believe if somebody's a stand-up guy, that their community will reflect that, right? Like they'll have support somewhere, somebody, you know what I'm saying, is going to get behind you if you are who you say you are.
Well, and then, I'm going to plug the homie Joe Guerrera's company here, Make Gangsters Real Again, because that's a real big principle about what you're talking about here. And I told this to somebody the other night. I was wearing that shirt and I had a suit on, and I had this T-shirt underneath said "Make Gangsters Real Again." Right? Guy asked me about it, and I said, "Well, look, man, it's not about this thug shit, shooting sideways ass gangster shit. It's like, when I say make gangsters real again, I mean like Al Capone, where Al Capone, his community loved him because he fed them and protected them and helped them when they needed it. And, if you were down on your check for the week, he'd give you some bread and cheese, and you know what I'm saying? And that's why he was so successful in his illicit business, right? Because the community loved him at the end of the day. Now I've taken that kind of same principle and like transferred it to legitimate business, right? But a lot of what we do is like one of the missions of Lane Hero is to make trucking cool again, because I really respect the American truck driver and do sincerely feel like they're the most important person in the world. And the coolest thing that happened to truck driving was Burt Reynolds and Smokey and the Bandit. You know what I mean? And we don't have a modern version of that. So,
Right. Classic too, ain't it?
Yeah, man, I love that stuff. I grew up on that stuff, and listening to freaking Golden Earring going down the road with a double tapping 18 speed, and that's like core memories for me that I think other people can see, and especially these young people coming up that just think, college education is the way and all that shit. Man, you get 25 years old, you hop in a truck, make $75,000 a year, pretty much anywhere in the United States.
Yeah.
You be clocking some cash quick. And if I would have done that at my age, or when I was that age and stuff, instead of the illicit business and all the kind of bullshit I was involved in, like I'd be a lot further even in my career in that particular industry.
Yeah, but would it have made you who you are today?
That's true. Yeah, no, and I'm thankful for my rough background and some of the connections that came out of all that stuff, and like we're now on the other side of it, and we talk about as far as serving an example of becoming, of like elevating past the hood is what we call it. It's like, if not us, then who? Because everybody else is dead or in jail or addicted to drugs, and it's like so there's a responsibility there for our community.
And if you don't make it, then all the fallen comrades, it was in vain, right? So I mean, when I was a short timer, I did like 18 months, and there's people in there doing life. So if I get a second chance and I fuck it up, what the hell does that make me? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's people that would, and probably even deserved a second chance more than I did. You know what I mean? So who am I to go out here and trick that off? You had a homie that OD'd, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you relapse or whatever, that's in vain. You know what I mean? You get a second chance and you shouldn't really trick it off, So yeah, I'm with you.
I've even had some personal struggles there, right? That are aside from business or anything. I stopped drinking in September because I was drinking a bottle of whiskey a day, right? So I'm almost a year now sober, and I lost 56 pounds from it, and I just feel better, and I'm able to be more productive for my associates and my employees and everybody around me, right? And just a lot happier too. But the only reason I mention that is I had a friend who wasn't so lucky, a guy named Mike Tinkle that I grew up with, who drank himself to death, and that was a real fucking eye opener for me. In fact, I'm fixing to get a tattoo of we called him Tink the Tank, and so I'm gonna get Tinkerbell in a tank as a constant reminder that I could have been just like him and drank myself to death. He was a great guy, right? Like, he did a lot for the community and gave back and was very active in his church and stuff, even despite his alcohol addiction. And so, things like that and personal stories of loss are what motivate me in a lot of ways to get out there and hit the slab every day. You know what I mean? and like, just, they say, get it how you live. And so large is what we got to do, because there's a lot of people on our backs that we're responsible for carrying their message and their memory, because they just can't do it anymore.
Right. So I got another question for you. So you've got like 15 minutes or something on a bench with anybody in history, dead or alive. Who would you choose to talk to, and what would you ask them?
15 minutes on a bench.
The time's irrelevant, but you know what I'm saying? You got a short amount of time on a bench with one person, anybody.
Alexander the Great.
Yeah?
Yep.
What would you ask?
I would get all of the details of how he built his empire.
Alexander the Great.
From a human capital standpoint, because, Alexander the Great took over the world at the time that he was alive, right? And he took over the world from not just a militaristic authority type standpoint, but also from a cultural and visionary standpoint, to bring all these varieties of cultures together into one thing and create a community that was his empire, right? And so that's what I'm on a mission to do. And I would go to the guy who's the best guy in history that ever did it.
That's a good answer. Good one, Josh. The name of this podcast is Wyze Words, obviously. So I always like to ask, what's like one of your favorite quotes that you live by, or you always kind of keep in mind?
It's not really a quote, but there's a really core memory that happened to me in my life, and it was kind of a combination of things. So I had a major lung surgery where I had to have half of my left lung removed about 14 years ago. That gave me a 20% chance to live even from the surgery. And so, I spent a good amount of time in the hospital recovering and physical therapy afterwards and all this other stuff. And during physical therapy, I happened upon Eric Thomas's very first famous speech about success. And so he tells this story about the guru that takes this guy who wants to be successful out into the beach and takes him out in the water, and the guy's like grumbling about it and all that stuff. And I won't get into the details of it, but the punchline of the whole thing is that the guy's under the water and the guru's holding his head under the water, and he gets him to where he's almost drowned in, and he lets him up, and the guy's all pissed off, and the guru says, "What did you want when you were under there?" And he goes, "Well, to fucking breathe," and the guru says, "Well, when you want success as bad as you want to breathe, then you'll get it." And for a guy who had a major lung surgery and almost suffocated to death and had all this recovery of building up my lung capacity and stuff, and I've literally felt the feeling of suffocating to death. I lived in an apartment when I first got out of the hospital, and I had to stop 3 times to go up the 17 steps to my apartment just to get in the front door. You know what I mean? Because I just didn't have the breath for it. That quote I carry around with me every day, because every breath that I've had since that point is a gift. And if I treat it that way, my life is more fulfilled. My ability to fill others' lives is more fulfilled. And my living my purpose of loving people is more fulfilled.
Man. I just had to let that one sink in a little bit. I remember that video though, and that's one of my favorites too. But the way you told that, and with the perspective from the lung thing, that's big. That is home. Well, let's see here. As far as you talked about Eric Thomas, not necessarily. That just kind of leads me to this. What would be a book that you recommend, or that you've read that has had an impact on your life?
Oh man, there's so many. The one that I most recently read that I really liked was Gucci Mane's Guide to Greatness.
Mm-hmm.
It's like more of a playbook of how he did it, and I really put value on 3 things in this world above anything else, and it's relationship, community, and that the greatest story ever told in the history of the world is a comeback. And so I think Gucci Mane is a great example of that, and a cultural example of that, in that now he's an icon that's built out this following and these different subsections of even his fans, right?
So is Gucci Mane the clone though? Did he come out of prison?
Man, I ain't even gonna speak on that. Like, if I was on the Enquirer doing an interview, maybe we'd, speak on the damn clone situation or adrenochrome or whatever else kind of shit's out there. Not that I don't believe some conspiracy theories, but yeah, I'm gonna just leave that one alone.
I had to throw it in there for a comedic standpoint. So.
Yeah.
Now I want to read that book though. I've got one of his older books, man. It kind of was more of the story and not the blueprint. I've heard about the one you're talking about, but I hadn't got into it yet. Why do you got anything else for him right now?
No, not today, but I do want to link up in the future. I'm sure there's some things that we can come up with and collaborate on.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I travel around too. I'll be
How far are you from us?
Shit, I don't know. I'd have to look at it, but I got an app for that.
What about Nashville? Like we're real close to Nashville, man. How far are you from Nashville? You probably know.
It's like a 6 hour drive to Nashville, but I mean Monday I'll be on the Ole Miss campus Monday for a show. So like our entertainment portion is headquartered out of Nashville, and I go over there pretty often. So
Yeah, we should link up the next time you come up to our neck of the woods. Then definitely.
Well, you're gonna have to come over here too. We doing it in the AR, man. We got have to have you on my show I've got coming up for Rockstar Radio Live.
Yeah. We got one last little segment we'd like to do, and it's called like the rapid fire section. So we're just gonna fire off some questions. It's kind of like multiple choice, or like A or B questions. So we'll start off. Android or Apple?
Apple.
AM or PM?
For business or pleasure?
Favorite time of the day, personal?
AM.
Football or basketball?
Basketball.
Horror or comedy?
Comedy.
Drums or flats?
Oh man, that's such a hard one. I'm gonna say drums.
Indica or sativa?
Indica at night, sativa in the morning.
Cheating.
That's cheating.
Come on. I'm a former criminal. What do you expect, right?
MJ or LeBron?
MJ all day. Scottie Pippen, actually, representing AR, Scottie Pippen. That's what I say.
What's your favorite season?
Fall.
All in the fall. Huh? Well, man, we appreciate you being here with us today. But where can people find you? How can they link in with you?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Lane Hero Boss, LANEHERO Boss. And then, my application is lanehero.net. You can download our prototype now on Google or Android or Apple right now. And then we're fixing to do a big release. Our entertainment company, we have two different divisions. TurnipBloodENT.com is our division for production and talent buy. And then we also have GreekFormals.com. We're actually the original Greek formal party planner across the United States there. So that's all the places you can find me. And then if you need any kind of freight needs, jperry@spi3pl.com. We can ship literally anything in the countries of the United States, Canada, and Mexico.
Awesome. You got anything else you'd like to add before we end this?
No, I just appreciate you guys having me on and the opportunity to speak on your show, and hope that everybody finds value out of this and keeps pushing for their dreams, man. Never give up.